Jason Hoppy here to show you how we can create a very cool slip shadow in Illustrator, and not just a standard blocky slip shadow, but one that could give you some really cool textures, like with lines or these kind of stripes, any type of slip shadow. And it's actually easier than you think. So what I've done is I've started off with a couple different characters here. Choose your typeface. Choose whatever character that you'd like to create a slip shadow on. We're going to grab that character, select it with our selection tool, go into the type menu, and we're going to create outlines. So turn that into an outline. We have our letter. I'm going to Option or Alt click and drag to duplicate that. I'm going to scale this up, holding my Shift key. And you can see I've already got my swatches over here ready to go. And the reason why I do that is because it's a whole lot easier for me to just draw my swatches and fill them with color. And then just grab my selection, grab my eyedropper tool by hitting the letter I, and simply sampling that color right there. It's like my artist palette right there. That's my quick and easy one. Go back to the selection tool, and here's my shape. And I want to create this slip shadow effect. So one way that I can create a slip shadow very easily with just taking the object and reproducing this, I'm going to Option or Alt click and drag this to duplicate this, one of my favorite features. And I want to create a slip shadow off to the right and down, and I'm going to do that with an effect. And that effect is going to be under Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. Make sure you click your preview. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to move this down, or move this over 1 millimeter, and then down 1 millimeter. I like millimeters because I like everything nicely divisible by 10. And you'll see that it'll ever so slightly move this down. But the copies are what I would like to do. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm just using my up arrow and my Shift key to get multiple copies of 10. You can just use your up and down arrow to create as many copies as you want. And I'm going to, in this case, I'm paying attention to this area right here because I don't want to do something like this where it kind of infringes on the crossbar, the F. So I'm going to create about 20 copies of this. And this is my slip shadow. Click OK. Grab my eyedropper tool and sample my other color. And this is what the slip shadow could look like. Now, if I was fine with this slip shadow, I could simply take this and park this underneath here, like so. Of course, it's going to show up on top, so I use my Shift Command or Shift Control left bracket to send that to the back. And there's my slip shadow. Okay? But that's not what I want to do. I want to create this cool effect, so I'm going to move this back over here. I'm going to go into Outline mode. Under View, go into Outline, Command or Control Y. And you can see that this slip shadow looks just like a normal shape. So I'm going to go back under my Command or Control Y and see my shape. I want to turn this into an actual shape here, not just an effect. So because this is an effect, I want to go under the Object menu and I want to expand the appearance, because the Expand Appearance is going to then expand it to make it actually the way it is based on how it looks. And really it's just a series of these shapes that are getting reproduced in steps. And if we go into Outline mode, you can see right here that it's just multiple shapes. With the Pathfinder panel, I now want to take those multiple shapes and merge those all together so it becomes one single shape. So if I go into Outline mode, you can see it's one single shape. And this is going to be my framework, or my frame that all my content's going to go in. And now, in order to get these little bars in here, I'm going to very quickly create a set of bars. And how I do that is I just use my line tool, and I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool to sample a color. And you notice when I sample a color from a fill, it puts it in my swatch panel as my fill, and the quick shortcut to flip my fill and my stroke here is just simply Shift X. And that's going to flip my fill and my stroke colors. And then I can beef up this line weight a little bit in the stroke panel up here, and good. Now I could use my Option or Alt and duplicate this, and then just keep doing Command or Control D to duplicate this, but that's one way of doing it. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to take that object, go into the Effect menu, Distort and Transform, Transform, and here I want to move this vertically a certain distance, say 5 millimeters. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to create lots of copies. Okay, tons of copies. Click OK. Now this is an effect, which means there's one bar right here, and it's controlling everything. Why do I do this? Well, in order to get this kind of stripe effect, I'm going to keep that here so you can see why I use this particular method. Because any editing that I do to this one bar will do it to them all. In fact, I'm going to put this over here because we are going to use this later, and I'm going to duplicate this just for our purpose right here. Move this out of the way. Okay? And so this is one bar. If I go into my outline mode, you'll see that it's just that one bar. So in order to make this into multiple bars that I can manipulate, again, I'm going to go into the Object menu, Expand Appearance, and these will all be just basic paths. I'm going to take my object that I have, and I'm going to remove the fill color here, which the easiest way to do that is just hit your question mark key, which is also your slash, and your slash will go ahead and get rid of it. And by the way, that little fill with none, that little slash right there is your question mark key. So I have nothing in this frame. I just want it completely blank. And then I'm going to grab all of my lines that I've expanded the appearance of, and I'm going to go into the Edit menu. I'm going to choose Cut, select my frame, go to the bottom of my toolbar, and click on the Draw Inside, because I want to then paste these bars inside my frame. And since the frame is filled with nothing, we don't see it, but we do see these little, basically these are little clipping dots right here to show that we can then paste our object inside that. I can click off this, click back on my Draw Normal mode, and there is my little slip screen right there. So I can take this object, and I'm going to move it behind here, make sure I select the object. I'm going to move it behind here, line it up exactly with that, and there is my little slip shadow. Now, what's cool with this is that I can now go in and I can mess with my slip shadow. If I would like to change the color or the weight of the lines, I can select my slip shadow frame, double click, which is going to get me into isolation mode. I can then click again and select all of my objects that are in here. And I can beef up the stroke with that if I'd like. Click Escape to get out of my isolation mode, and I can very easily change what's inside the clipping mask. The Draw Inside is basically a different way to do a clipping mask. But there's other cool things we can do with this as well. I'm going to go back to my one line that I used my transform effect on. And the reason why I like to use this transform effect to get multiple lines rather than actually creating multiple lines is this. If I go in here and I take my one line, which has been transformed numerous times, I'm going to grab my width shape tool, which is Shift W, and I'm going to change the width of this line. And you'll notice, because this is duplicated over multiple steps, this allows me to come in here, and when I change the one line, this will change all of the lines, because the transform is actually saying just take whatever you have there and repeat it. So if I would like a set of lines here that is going to be repeated, I can just take that line weight, I'm going to reduce it down a little bit here, and you can see that we can create lines that go from thick to thin. Pretty cool. And I just have one line that's simply being transformed over a greater distance. So if I go back to my width shape tool and I pull that out, I can do that. And so now I've got kind of these tapered lines that I can work with. And this can be fun too, because now if I'd like to take these tapered lines, and I'm going to move them over here and create a copy of this, so I could always come back here and edit those later. So you do my Option or Alt, click and drag. I'm now going to take these and I'm going to expand the appearance here. You don't need to expand the appearance, but I do simply because when I go in here, I'm going to show you another trick that I'm going to do and put this into perspective. So here's my lines that kind of have a taper, and I could go in here and kind of move them around, scrunch them here. I'm going to duplicate this shape again, that little slip shadow frame that I had. Now, in order to go in and paste something else new in here, I've got to release the contents in here. So I'm actually going to go under Object, Clipping Mask, and I'm going to release this. This allows me to remove the content that I have, go back in to my shape and be able to click on the draw inside. If you have previously done a draw inside on a shape, you will not be able to do a draw inside again until you perform that object clipping mask release. Click on the draw inside mode, you get your little bounding box. I'm going to take my object, I'm going to cut that with my shape selected and the draw inside. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to zoom back out so we can see what we have, and here's our little slip shadow with our taper. Okay, and I just double click on that frame to go into isolation mode, and it isolates what's inside. I then click on in the inside, and I'm going to just scale this down, holding my Option or Alt key to scale it from the middle. And I can move this around so that I can get more of a tapered effect on my lines. So you can see that. Click Escape to get out of my isolation mode. Now if I were to duplicate my letter over the top of this, I could see that I get that kind of tapered effect in there. It's kind of cool. Okay. Now I'm going to take it one more step. I'm going to duplicate all of these again, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to select my background, my little framework here. I'm going to use my Free Transform tool, which is the letter E. The Free Transform tool has its own floating panel, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to free distort the content of my frame. And I'm going to use the last tool here, which is Free Distort. And I get my little pull handles here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this down, and I'm kind of going to move these together, putting this into perspective. So you can see I can get perspective here, and I can also make this end a lot wider to create perspective, and I've run out of space here, so let me just move around. And then I can put this into perspective here and create a really cool tapered perspective. Hit Escape to get back out of isolation mode, go back to my selection tool, and now I've got this cool feature where I've got all of these tapering off into the distance. I like that. Now I can also go in and apply any type of effect to this in these internal lines. And again, I can go back to my original set that I had transformed. And if I take this line and I apply some other effect to this, say I go in and I do, say, a zigzag, or in this one I did a roughen. But if I do a zigzag here and I do a smooth zigzag, and I do kind of this wavy effect, I can control the waviness, and I can control how many ripples I have in here. Click OK. I can take this cool wavy effect that I have, and I can apply this. Now, this F that I did up here, I just applied a roughen effect to it. I'm just trying all these different types of effects. I'm going to duplicate this background again, go under Object, Clipping Mask, and I want to release the clipping mask so I can then remove my content. My frame is still there. Go back to the draw inside, grab my cool effect here, and I'm just going to copy this. With my shape selected, I'm going to paste that to get that pasted inside. And you can see that I can move this all around here. Now, this is one of the reasons why I usually expand this in here, because this is weird to only see this particular one active. And because remember, this was an effect. So we just have that one line. I just showed you in outline mode what that looks like. So once I get my content in there the way I'd like, I'm going to click Escape to get me out of isolation mode, go back to my Move tool, duplicate my shape, and put it on top there. So now I create all these cool slip shadows that are a lot of fun. There's one trick, and I've left this here. So here I've got a compound path. So I'm going to take this ampersand, I'm going to duplicate that down here, use my Shift Command or Shift Control O to outline it, scale that up, use my eyedropper tool to sample the color, and I'd like to create that same kind of effect that I've done here. So again, I'm going to duplicate my ampersand, go under Effect, choose this Distort and Transform, and I'm going to transform this down and over by setting the vertical here, and then create as many copies as I'd like. And I want to make sure that when I create the copies, I don't create kind of some weird tangents here. So I always pay attention to the depth of this, so I make it look just like it should be. I don't get any weird edges or anything. I'm going to click OK. Now, of course, Object, expand the appearance to break this into all the shapes. Shape Builder tool, merge all those shapes together. I'm going to fill this with nothing by hitting my question mark or my slash key, so it removes the fill. I'm going to click on the Draw Inside mode here. And with the Draw Inside, this allows me to go directly to this shape. And then I'm going to grab this cool shape here, and I'm going to paste it inside right there, which I absolutely love. And now, go back to my Draw Normal mode, and I'm going to drag my image over the top of this and use my Shift Command or Shift Control right bracket to bring that up. And now we've got this crazy, wacky, cool effect that we have in here. I love it. Got to line that up a little bit better with that compound shape. And that compound shape gives me those kind of like those little inner areas here that make it look like it's all swiveled and beveled here. And so super, super awesome things that you can do with this. I just wanted to show you a couple different examples. But fun stuff with creating any type of slip shadow. And again, you can click back on your slip shadow shape, double click on it to isolate it, get back in to the original object here. I'm just going to run one more filter on this just to, let's go ahead and do a roughen on this a little bit here. I don't want to have it too rough. Maybe just a little bit. See what that looks like. And there, get back out of isolation mode. It didn't look like it did as much as I wanted to.